You know, taking into consideration how my last couple of reviews have mostly been about smashing Nars into gooey paste or sawing Kako demons in half, I think now might be an ideal time to switch gears and talk about something a little less violent. Perhaps a game that's more thought-provoking, more visually stunning, and far more easygoing on the ears. And it will be a game developed by Croatia. Yes, if you found the contradiction in that statement already, I'll give you credit for noticing that quickly. Croatia has had the track record of making the delightfully cartoony and off-the-wall ludicrous shooters known as Serious Sam, and something about football, but hey, you gotta start from somewhere. So where does the Talos Principle originate from, and how did it come to be? According to the team, during the course of developing Serious Sam 4, a simple puzzle devised of gates and devices nicknamed jammers was being experimented on, when the designers then concluded that an entirely different game could be made just by running with this concept. The more complex the puzzles were designed, the more enjoyment the team experienced. So, Sam 4 was put on hold, and Croatia hunkered down to produce a new IP, which would not see a proper reveal until about 6 months prior to its release. The game was made available for PC platforms on December 11th of 2014, and later on, released for Android and PlayStation 4 on May 28th and October 13th of 2015, respectively. Now, at the time of the game's reveal, I was neutral at best. I mean, I was happy to see that Croatia was branching out beyond their frantic shooter games, but given my lack of experience with puzzle games in the past, I wasn't sure if I would secure this game immediately on launch. So, I didn't. I ended up watching somebody else play it blindly, and after a little bit of consideration, decided to give it a go for myself. Of course, around this time, everyone was comparing this game to Portal, because apparently that's the only other first-person puzzle game to ever walk the face of the earth. But I can assure you, this game is much more than Valve's brand of puzzling. So, sit back and relax as we take a look at the Talos Principle. The adventure begins by waking up in the ruins of ancient Rome, greeted by a benevolent voice in the sky who calls himself Elohim. He challenges you to locate the entrance to his temple, that is, if you are worthy of doing so. In this land of ruins, you discover a strange presence of rather futuristic-looking devices. Energy gates, floating bombs, minigun turrets, and devices known as jammers, which are used to stop all of those from impeding your progress. By overcoming these obstacles and collecting little Tetris pieces along the path, Elohim reveals to you that he has constructed a world of multiple themes, jam-packed with puzzles for you to solve and devices for you to collect. If you display perseverance and vigilance by solving all of his puzzles, you are permitted to ascend and be with him for eternity. In the midst of all of this, Elohim warns you to avoid the temptation of climbing a skyscraping tower, for it is considered a place of death. Oh come on, look at this structure! How the hell do you expect me to avoid climbing that thing? So we got a little Garden of Eden scenario going on here, with an explosive personality to boot. But the other detail you'll observe straight from the get-go is that your character is not flesh and blood, but rather an artificial intelligence of a humanoid shape. The other side of the story is a journey of self-discovery in this garden. You'll find yourself being challenged by a computer program named Milton, who invokes difficult questions about what it means to be human. Simultaneously, you'll be digging deep into a large archive of excerpts from ancient writers, conversations between people on the internet, and audio logs recorded by a mysterious woman named Alexandra Drennan. So while balancing the task of collecting Elohim's sigils and learning more about the nature of humanity, how far are you willing to go under your god's command? Will you diligently follow Elohim's instruction and solve all of his mysteries? Will you take it a step further and locate Elohim's hidden worlds to attain the rank of Blessed Messenger? Or will you follow the words of the proverbial serpent and climb the mysterious tower? The story, if you're willing to pay any attention to it, can play a pretty big role in this game, and I'd rather not spoil any of the endings for the folks who might be hooked so far. While I'd encourage newcomers to pay at least half of their mind's attention to what's going on, I can also applaud this game for having a story that is pretty much optional to look into. Nobody's grabbing your hand and pulling you towards each piece of the puzzle, or so to speak. Most of it is contained within the computer terminals and audio diaries. If you just want to solve the puzzles, you are free to do so without interruption. But if you find the topic of philosophy intriguing, you're going to have a field day with this game. Some of these debates against the program living inside the archive can really get your mind fixated on finding the right answer to his difficult questions. Yeah, frogs are people too! The Talos Principle plays with the typical first-person control system, although like a majority of Croatia's 3D games, you can switch to third-person anytime you want. Besides basic movement and orientation, the player can interact with switches or pick up objects by using mouse 1 and release by pressing mouse 2. By holding shift, you can indefinitely sprint without sacrificing the need to hold on to something, which increases efficiency. Jumping also plays a huge part in exploration, especially with the auto-jumping mechanic. If the game detects a surface for you to jump on, a pair of footprints will appear on the section you're aiming towards. Just tap the jump button once and your character will effortlessly bound towards that location. Puzzles are divided into two categories. The main course serves a three-dimensional plane with a set number of tools for you to work with in order to acquire a sigil. The sigils are involved in the second flavor of puzzles, which involve messing around with the sides of each sigil to fill in an empty grid of tiles. Solving these will grant you access to new areas of the garden, or will unlock a new device for you to use. If you get stuck in a certain chamber or you feel the need to reform your strategy, you can hold down the X key to reset the current puzzle. Be cautious, however, as doing so can reset all of the work you've accomplished in the current map. Don't worry, this action will not get rid of the sigils you've collected. Elohim's Garden is comprised of 3 different worlds. You begin in ancient Rome, and as you progress, you unlock access to the ruins of Egypt and the medieval age. Each world allows you to access every sub-world in a non-linear fashion, meaning if you'd rather not tackle a puzzle giving you a difficult time, you're free to look around and locate one that's a little less mind-boggling. Don't feel like collecting this shiny gadget to complete this puzzle just yet? That's no problem, you can burn that bridge when you get to it. Puzzle chambers will always warn you if you're missing a device necessary to complete it, so just keep an eye on the symbols which represent each tool. And on the subject of those tools, let's describe their functions real quick. Jammers do exactly what they say on the tin. You can use them to disable force fields or an actively moving obstacle by pointing at the target and setting it down. Connectors invoke the power of red and blue lasers, which must be guided from a light source and connected by other connectors to open doors or power a different device. Remember not to cross the streams. Hexahedrons are universally helpful tools, allowing you to access greater heights, place other devices on top of them, or obstruct the path of any moving obstacles. Alternately, you may also place a box on the head of a mine or a buzzer, which allows you to get to different areas without the threat of being exploded. Much to my annoyance, the game never properly informs you of this. Large metallic fans can be used to send you flying a great distance, or for elevating boxes with jammers and connectors stacked on top. Recorders are probably the most infamous of all available tools. By initiating a recording session and interacting with the world around you, playing said recording back will create a clone of yourself, which may be able to assist you in real time if you've worked out how to solve the problem before you. And finally, we have platforms, which only serve the purpose of extending the complexities of the recording tool. By starting a recording and running around with a platform on your robotic skull, your future self can hop right on and be carried around. You may also use these to escape confinement from the chamber, which is always a fun option, but don't expect to make much progress by traversing the endless dunes or flat meadows. Elohim has his eye on his followers constantly, meaning if you explore a bit too far for his liking, he'll enter a dialogue of mantra involving the beginning where there were words, and the words made the world.
I am the words are everything. Where the words end, the world ends. You cannot go forward in an absence of space. Repeat.
The enemies of this game are referred to as guardians. The first enemy is a floating mine, which is typically set to follow a certain pattern, or simply hover in place. These guys are flat out unnerving. Mines only become a threat if you stand within their bubble space, indicated by the red lasers. But that incessant beeping noise can make anyone shit bricks. If you wander too close to a mine, you probably know what happens next. Next are the buzzers, electrified guardians which behave similarly to the mines. Touching them doesn't immediately cause death, but do it enough times and you'll run out of battery power, so just stay out of the way. And then we have the minigun turrets, which will accurately gun you down if you stand within proximity of their lasers. These are really just XPs of the minigun turrets in Serious Sam 3, but I'm sad to report that you cannot take a minigun for your own purposes. Now, sigils are the main treasures you'll be gathering on your quest, but those with a keen eye and the ability to think outside of the box can be rewarded with secret stars. Stars can range from being somewhat simple to notoriously challenging to locate. Some stars require cross-puzzle solutions or nabbing a device from a certain chamber to aid you in a different part of the map. And then there are stars which are just cryptic as all hell, where if you find yourself looking up the solution on the internet, I don't personally blame you. So, what is the grand purpose of collecting the golden stars? To enter Elohim's hidden worlds, as the stars are represented by golden sigils on their locks. Further into the topic of secrets, players who prioritize exploring every little detail of the world might stumble upon Easter eggs. All across the garden are clever jokes or references to other franchises, and while not every single subsection contains an Easter egg, it's more likely than not that you'll discover a hidden gem. One thing you may have taken notice about the world around you is the presence of QR codes pasted on the walls. These are actually messages posted by other androids within the garden, or you might even find notes written by your Steam friends if they played the game recently. You can leave your territorial mark by first locating a sparkling bucket of paint tucked away in your location. By the way, if you happen to cross a QR code that seems illegible, break out your phone or QR code scanner. There might be a fun little message hidden inside. The final bit of gameplay involves the hint system, which is a bit of a risky maneuver as you can only use up to a total of 3 hints in the entire game. However, you have to unlock the ability to use hints beforehand.
It's like an inception of puzzles. You have to solve the puzzle to get a hint at how to solve a puzzle.
Yeah, what he said. In order to even unlock the limited selection of hints, you'll have to spend time solving puzzles that aren't giving you a difficult time until you reach the 3rd world. There, you can pick up an axe to break down sets of pallets which prevented you from accessing the Messenger Islands, and even then, in order to free the entombed messengers, you have to go about solving a large string of grid puzzles. This short supply of a hint system is definitely the weaker aspect of the game, thanks to the overabundance of puzzles laid at your feet. But nevertheless, you would probably gain more satisfaction from overcoming the challenges without any guidance. Besides, the only reason I really have for visiting the Messenger Islands is simply because they look gorgeous. Well, maybe that's not the only reason. And that's a good way to transition to the presentation value, because there is so much eye candy to be found in this game. Croteam continues to uphold the tradition of trying to make their next hit title look more realistic. And while there certainly isn't as much ground to cover compared to the generational gap between, say, Serious Sam Classic and Serious Sam 3, the Talos Principle's visual style outmatches Serious Sam 3's by a mile. This game is blooming with color and atmosphere, and with a sly method of splitting the world into bite-sized chunks, the developers were able to cram many little bits of detail into each world without running the risk of killing the average PC's frame rate. You could just be standing underneath a tree for one moment before taking notice that leaves are gently falling towards the ground before you, or you could be gazing at the majestic beauty of the snow-capped mountains far into the distance. The only times I ever found plain ugliness is when you're given the option to climb out of bounds and observe in detail all the little things that developers really didn't want you to see. Customizing your performance settings can be just as intricate as it was in Serious Sam 3. This game is obviously not as taxing on the average machine, given the absence of hordes of monsters roaming about, but if you feel the need to adjust your settings to smooth out performance, hey, knock yourself out. And then we have the soundtrack. Even if you're not a fan of Damien's work, this man is admirably flexible with music composition. The music of this game is much more ambient in style, doing away with any percussion beats to avoid distracting the player while solving a conundrum. You'll fall in love with the peaceful melodies of this game. I know I certainly did. Considering how I've been running the tradition of picking nits after I gush over a game, we've managed to reach that point with, well, not very much I'm willing to complain about. Why yes, I am incredibly biased when it comes to the Talos Principle, how could you tell? It's just so challenging to find something which I downright hate about this game that almost anything that comes to mind seems like a bit of a stretch. So instead, we're going to use this segment of the video to talk about the things which mildly agitate me. First of all, we have, well, I mean, the 3rd world of the garden is green like ancient Rome, so -1 point there. Well, I guess 1 or 2 of the secret stars are a little bit too cryptic, so shave a few more points off of that, and, oh yeah, Fork Parker, he doesn't have any facial animations, there we go! That counts for something, right? Really, at this point, I'm very conflicted on labeling this video as a review because of my incredibly biased praise for this game. Anyway, let's briefly talk DLC. After the transpiring events of the main campaign, Elohim still has a task for one of his blessed messengers named Uriel. You're thrown into the shoes of this android to free a number of other intelligences trapped in a purgatory known as Gehenna, which includes a bundle of new worlds and some of Croteam's most difficult puzzles ever created. If you're starving for an even greater challenge after completing the main game, you can pick up Road to Gehenna for about $15 on Steam. But aside from a campaign expansion, there is also a voice and skin pack to enhance your Talos Principle experience. The skin pack allows you to dress up like Serious Sam, and the voice pack is Serious Sam. And he will snark you in your entire journey across the garden.
Oh man, that was hilarious! Do it again!
I'm going to reiterate, I'm very conflicted on whether or not I should label this video as a review, because when it comes to talking about the Talos Principle, my praise-riddled biases really show. And to think that this was the first puzzle game I ever completed, not exactly sharing an interest in anything else in the genre before it. Yes, I will shamefully admit I never did complete Portal 2, I lost an interest surprisingly quickly. So what was it about this particular title that kept me invested? Well, there's tons of factors that come into play. 1. The visuals. The art style of this game is just gorgeous. Nowhere did I ever find something that felt jarring or just plain ugly to look at. I mean, apart from when you escape confinement to the puzzle chambers. 2. The gameplay. It's very solid and adaptive. It eases you into each puzzle element comfortably, and it still offers you the freedom to complete things in your own desired order. 3. The soundtrack. Good God, the soundtrack. 4. The story. It's clever, challenging, and insightful. This is a game where I feel it excels in almost every aspect, and by the time I had first reached the ending, I was just left wanting more. If the developers managed to succeed in invoking such a desire from me, then I hope it can do the same for you. And I could just keep on going. All of this can be found at the price range for about 40 to 45 bucks. Depending on how clever you are at solving puzzles can determine how long the experience will be, but even at a price like this, if you dig puzzle games, I'm willing to bet that you won't regret your purchase. And remember, this is a Devolver Digital published game. Their selection of titles tend to go on sale pretty often, so keep an eye out. And in conclusion, I just want to thank you all very much for watching, and I hope you have a great day or evening.